Magnus here, and in today's episode I want to talk about the basics when it comes to using your DSLR or mirrorless camera, getting out of automatic and going into manual with your DSLR or mirrorless camera when you want to start using one of these cameras to shoot video like this. Here we go. Behind you with like the clouds, the sky and everything, and still be able to see. We've got the Rode video mic. Here we go. M50. What do you guys think? Welcome to today's episode. I'm Magnus, as I said previously, and we're going to talk about getting out of automatic and going into manual with your DSLR or mirrorless camera, specifically for video, but this will apply for taking pictures as well. There's one extra rule in video that pictures doesn't have, but it'll help you in either case to know all these rules and settings. So let's get started. Now, I got the idea for this subject by meeting an Instagrammer called Brown-Eyed Flower Child, which I'll put her link right here so you can definitely check out her Instagram. She does great travel pictures and travel blogs on her website, and she's thinking about going into YouTube. So I'm hugely excited for that. So we talked a bunch, and I wanted to learn more about Instagram as well. So this brought on the idea of like, why haven't I done a video specifically when it comes to the basic settings on a camera for recording video? Might as well just get it out of the way, right? And help out anyone who's actually looking for that. So first things first, get a DSLR mirrorless camera that has manual functionality, which is a lot of cameras nowadays. Even some cell phones will give you that opportunity, but we're speaking mostly about DSLR and mirrorless cameras. So next thing you do this scary step of switching from automatic to manual. That's step number one. Great job. So since we're speaking specifically on video for this next step, this will apply to those doing video. Now, I recommend doing the highest resolution possible at 24 frames per second if you're not shooting slow-mo. If you are shooting slow-mo, then go as high of a frame rate as you possibly can on your camera, from 60 all the way to 120, whatever that is. But if we're sticking to talking head like what I'm doing now, or cinematic scenes that you might want to film, then stick to 24 frames per second at the highest resolution you can. However, for those that are beginning and really learning about video, I'd make sure that 1080p is the max that you do. 4K requires a bit more powerful computer. No matter what type of compression that you have in your computer, you want to stick to something simple. Okay, moving on. So you choose 1080p, 24 frames per second. You might see 23.98 or something like that. That's okay too. That's the refresh rate of a computer. So now you need the other settings to get the look that you want, because a lot of people want that shallow depth of field, and to control that is actually controlled with your camera's aperture, which also depends on the lens that you buy. Different lenses have different max apertures that you can set. You'll see some lenses, especially zoom lenses, that'll do like 3.5 to like 5.6 or 6.3. The higher the number, the less shallow depth of field that you can get. Basically, it'll be harder to accomplish that shallow depth of field without making a few sacrifices, such as zooming in on a subject and then backing up a lot. You'll see that you're still able to get it if you can actually zoom in, even though the lens doesn't go as low as you would want. But the lower the number, the more light you'll absorb and basically add that nice background blur. So get that number way down. This camera is set to f1.4, so I'm getting somewhat of a blurry background. This is actually a 35mm lens with a speed booster, which is like a focal reducer, and then a micro four thirds camera, which is a sensor size. All that's too technical. Just know that the lower the number, better the blur. All right, moving on. So now you've got it as low as you can possibly get it. The next setting is shutter speed. Shutter speed is basically how long it takes before your camera refreshes to collect more light to make blah, 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 blah. Set it to double your frame rate. I told you guys to set 24 frames per second for the frame rate of your video. So now set it to double that, which would be 1/48. And on most DSLR mirrorless cameras, they don't do 1/48. So it's okay to set it to 1/50. If you do slow motion, like 60 frames per second, then double that shutter speed to 120. But why? Because it makes your smooth video work. It'll look natural. The movements will look natural. But if you don't do that, if it's too fast, then you look jittery. If it's too slow, then it looks like a dream, and then that looks weird. So set it double, leave it there. All right, so you got your lowest aperture setting on your camera. You've got the shutter speed where it needs to be, and that you can't change that. But now when you're looking at your subject, you're too dark. It's not bright enough. What do? That's the third light setting, ISO. ISO, a lot of people call it. So that's the last setting that you should definitely choose on your camera, and adjust that to a higher number until your exposure looks the way you would want when you're filming. So when adjusting it, just understand that the higher the number, the more like noise you'll see in your screen. What noise means is kind of like you'll see like imperfections in it. You'll start to look like not blurry, but like you'll see like grainy footage, stuff like that. That's what you're looking out for when you set that number higher. So that's why you set it last, because you always want it as low as possible, unless you've already maxed out all the other settings. Then you'll just bring that up to whatever you need. And don't be afraid to do higher numbers as long as you can get a footage looking the way you want it. In post-production, you'll eventually learn that there are a couple of tricks that you can do to actually make the footage look better, and color corrections to make it natural. But the important thing is that when you're filming, you get it to look exposed right, given your conditions. Now, it's better if it's way too dark, turn on a light or something. I mean, that'll help you reducing that ISO number back down to where you want it. But still, you have that option on most cameras, so don't worry about it too much. Finally, but what if after you have the aperture as low as possible to get that nice background blur that you're looking for, like let's say you're outside, and you've got the shutter speed that has to be locked? What if it's too darn bright and your ISO's at the lowest setting you can possibly set it at? That's when you have to get creative. You either have to get that f-stop back up to f8 or f11, which unfortunately you no longer have that interesting background blur, or you can get an ND filter and put it on your lens. And what an ND filter is basically something that you could screw onto the front of your lens. Make sure you get it to the size of the lens that you have and screw it on in the front. What that'll do is be like sunglasses for your lens and actually darken it a little bit so you can still get the effect that you want without changing your aperture or ruining your video by changing the shutter speed, and get that background blur that you want and everything looking crisp and beautiful. I actually have an ND filter now because I wanted to capture what's outside and have it blurred in this scene, but then I would have been too dark, so I added a light. So again, there's different ways of working with that light that you have in your shot, and it's important to know that you have those options and what everything does in your camera. So now you got the frame rate, aperture, shutter speed, ISO setting, start filming. At least for the look that you want. Now there's a ton of other features that you can set on your camera, such as color profile, such as the type of microphone that you're using. Right now I'm using a shotgun mic right above my head to record this video, but there's a ton of different other features that you can play with and learn. But getting out a manual means that you needed to know what those specific settings that I told you mean. So remember those and use them to your advantage. And from there, just get creative with everything that you have. And I thank you guys for watching this video. It means a lot to me that you found me. I want you to hit that subscribe button, notifications, blah, 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 blah. But I tend to have a routine if you're new here. If you're not new here, then you know you can make my day if you subscribe today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. See you guys next time with more camera videos. See you later.